Welcome to NTD News. I'm Holly Kellum. Here are today's top stories. The UN calls on countries to offer more support to refugees. The organization said countries need to help refugees flourish and become more self-reliant. A top White House official says the partial US-China trade deal is done. He says it will double the United States exports to China. A 6-year legal case drew to a close today in Pakistan as a former military leader is sentenced to death. And the holiday season sees Americans throw away 25% more trash than normal. We give you tips to enjoy the holidays while preventing unnecessary trash. The U.S. Senate is voting today on whether to support an over $700 billion defense policy bill. The bill, if passed, will be sent to the White House for President Trump to sign into law. This is one of the few pieces of major legislation Congress passes every year, so it includes a range of policy measures. Everything from military pay levels to which ships or aircraft will be modernized, purchased, or discontinued. This year's bill included a 3.1% pay increase for the troops, the first paid family leave for all federal workers, and the creation of a Space Force, a top military priority for President Trump. The UN held a meeting in Geneva today to urge countries to change the way they deal with refugees and together build new systems of support.
The United Nations wants countries and institutions to agree to new ways to support refugees. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees spoke in Geneva on Tuesday about why current models of handling refugees need to change.
The international response to refugees has been piecemeal and unbalanced.
Leaders from many countries attended. The UN Secretary General gave remarks on shortfalls in current systems.
Confined to camps, just scraping by, unable to flourish or contribute.
The meeting follows the work put into the UN's report, Global Compact on Refugees, and is a call for countries to follow its guidelines. The compact has 4 stated objectives: to ease the pressures on host countries, to enhance refugee self-reliance, to expand access to third country solutions, and to support conditions in countries of origin for return in safety and dignity.
Turkey's president is warning that he may shut down 2 military bases that host U.S. troops and aircraft. He is responding to U.S. threats of sanctions on Turkey and resolutions condemning the killing of Armenians as genocide. Here's the response from the U.S. Secretary of Defense.
I think the issue here is
U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper responded to reports that Turkey might close bases that house U.S. and NATO troops and U.S. aircraft. He said on Monday that this is something NATO members would have to discuss if Turkey is serious about doing it.
I mean, they're a sovereign nation to begin with, so they have that inherent right to house or to not house NATO bases or foreign troops.
Although a NATO ally, Turkey took the controversial move of buying an anti-aircraft missile system from Russia that was reportedly delivered this year. As a result, the U.S. has said it will kick Turkey out of its F-35 fighter jet program and has threatened sanctions. The U.S. is worried that the S-400 could be used by Russia to gather data on the capabilities of the F-35 fighter jets. The White House said last week that U.S. troops are in Turkey at Turkey's request to help it defeat ISIS. But Turkey is angry over the threat of sanctions and the U.S. Congress passing resolutions labeling the killing of Armenians as genocide. Turkey's president said he was considering closing the bases in response.
I think the issue here is once again, what is Turkey's direction with regard to the NATO alliance and the actions they're taking on any number of issues that I've mentioned in the past. Whether it's the
Also last week, Turkey's president spoke with Russia's president. After the meeting, the Russian government put out a statement saying the 2 countries plan to continue to cooperate militarily.
Senator Lindsey Graham said on Monday that Pakistan's pressure on the Taliban could help resolve Afghan conflicts.
Senator Graham, speaking from the Afghan capital of Kabul, said Pakistan could help resolve the conflict in Afghanistan.
I think the relationship that President Trump has with Pakistan could change behavior in a way that would really accelerate the chance for peace. We all know that if Pakistan applied more pressure on the Taliban, it would be enormously helpful to resolving the conflict here.
The U.S. Special Envoy for Afghanistan, Zalmay Khalilzad, paused peace talks with the Taliban last Friday after an attack on a crucial U.S. base in Bagram. 5 coalition soldiers were injured, at least 2 Afghans were killed, and 70 others wounded. Graham, however, said the Taliban could not be trusted to be a reliable counterterrorism force.
Insane for America to rely on the Taliban to ensure that Al-Qaeda and ISIS-K doesn't come back in a way to represent a threat to our allies in the American homeland.
Meanwhile, Graham confirmed that President Trump may announce an American troop drawdown from Afghanistan before the year's end, which would likely begin next year.
A top White House official touted the Phase 1 trade deal with China yesterday, saying it will double U.S. exports to China.
Top White House advisor Larry Kudlow affirmed Monday a U.S.-China trade deal, Phase 1, is complete and now being translated.
Make no mistake about it, the deal is done. The deal is completed.
Kudlow also says the agreement will ease trade tensions and increase U.S. exports to China. Under the agreement, Beijing promises to increase imports from the U.S. in the next 2 years by $200 billion.
We are going to double U.S. exports. The positive effects on economic growth in this country cannot be exaggerated. In addition to lowering the tempers and putting some more certainty into it, I think you're going to get a very good business year out of this.
The 2 countries agreed on Phase 1 of a deal last week after 1.5 years of a trade war. President Trump claimed a trifecta of victories last week in advancing his America First trade policy. Besides the U.S.-China trade deal, the White House reached consensus with House Democrats on the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement and brought the World Trade Organization's appeal process to a halt, signifying his emphasis on making bilateral deals over global integration. Wall Street climbed to a new high Monday as trade risk is lowered and investors' sentiment improves. Kudlow also said on Monday he would visit Britain in early January for economic and trade talks.
3 people are confirmed dead today and a dozen more injured after powerful storms left a trail of destruction across the Deep South.
1 person was reported killed in a suspected tornado strike on a Louisiana home. 2 others were reported dead after another storm hit a community about 55 miles west of the North Alabama city of Huntsville. Crews worked through the night in a cold rain to clear roadways strewn with debris in the central Louisiana town of Alexandria. Alexandria saw a school and other buildings blown apart. This Alexandria resident says her house is okay, but all the other houses around it are not.
You can't even find some of the properties, houses that used to be here. You can't even find them anymore.
This couple from Pineville, Louisiana said they narrowly escaped flying debris as the storm ravaged their mobile home.
And thank God we didn't stay in my room, because if we would have, it blew all the glass. We would have had glass. We probably wouldn't be here to talk about this.
The storms prompted numerous tornado watches and warnings Monday. The National Weather Service said the severe weather threat could last into Tuesday.
A Spacex rocket yesterday evening launched the first satellite working to bring internet access to remote areas of the Pacific. Satellite company Civics is based in Singapore. It aims to bring consistent internet connections to as many as 1 million people living on islands between Asia's southern coast and Australia. Named Civics 1, the satellite will sit in an orbit about 22,000 miles above the Asia-Pacific region. Ground stations will bounce its signal to antennas, creating internet hotspots. People living near the hotspots will be able to stop by their grocery store or gas station and pick up vouchers for internet access. A gigabyte of data should cost between $1.50 and $2. That's about 1/3 the price of a wireless phone plan in the U.S. And the Clinch River, which runs 300 miles through Appalachia. Scientists are rushing to discover the cause of a massive mussel die-off in what is one of the most important rivers for freshwater mussels in the world.
46 different species of mussels and 133 species of fish live in the river.
When you look at the total picture of the environment here in Southwest Virginia and down into the Southeast, you've got one of the richest biodiversity spots in the entire world.
At Kyle's Fort in northeastern Tennessee, biologist Jordan Richard and his team are searching the river for recently dead pheasant shell mussels. The rocky bottom of the river is littered with the white shells of dead mussels.
This is a pheasant shell, Actinonius pectorosa. This is the species that we've been the most concerned about with the dieoff in the Clinch River.
Richard slogged through thigh-deep water in search of pheasant shell mussels. His team goes out to this stretch of river regularly to track the rate of the mussel die-off, as well as to collect healthy mussels for studying.
And so in 2016, before we saw the major problem emerge, we had approximately 94,000 pheasant shell mussels that lived in a 200-meter stretch of the river right behind me here. Now, as of 2019, we have less than 14,000 pheasant shell that live in that same.
Over the past century, mussel populations everywhere have declined steeply due to pollution, habitat loss, and climate change. Richard says the reasons for the current decline are bound to be complex and multi-layered.
Pakistan's former military leader was sentenced to death in absentia today for unlawfully declaring emergency rule.
A Pakistani court on Tuesday sentenced the country's former military leader, Pervez Musharraf, to death. He is found guilty of unlawfully declaring emergency rule at the close of a 6-year legal case. Musharraf, seen here surrounded by security, first appearing in court in April 2013. A senior Supreme Court lawyer said it was a historic moment for Pakistan,
where for the first time a military dictator has been punished by the court under the constitution and the law. And it was overdue.
He said it was not the first time the constitution was violated in Pakistan. At the heart of the case were actions taken by Musharraf in 2007, who then unlawfully imposed emergency rule. In 2008, he resigned to avoid being overthrown. Musharraf came to power 9 years earlier after ousting the standing Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif in a bloodless coup. Sentenced in absentia, Musharraf left Pakistan seeking medical treatment in Dubai 3 years ago. If he were to return, he would have the right to challenge his conviction and sentence in court.
Hong Kong residents gathered all over the city during their weekend and lunch hours to write Christmas cards. They're writing to injured protesters and those still in detention as demonstrations continue through the holiday season.
Christmas won't be the same in Hong Kong this year. More than 6,000 people have been arrested since protests started, and an undisclosed number will spend the holidays behind bars. But even for those who can enjoy Christmas with loved ones like Felix Wong, there is a feeling of guilt that others aren't so lucky.
I don't want to celebrate because so many people. They were seriously injured. Maybe they even beaten by the police seriously and cannot see the doctor, and they are not allowed to send to the hospital.
And so some Hong Kong residents have come together to write Christmas cards to the protesters still in detention. During lunch break, people here of all ages are putting pen to paper to remind those held by the authorities that they haven't been forgotten.
Even if some of them have already gone to heaven, I hope they can receive our message. Although we can't wish them Merry Christmas in person, we will be here waiting for them. We will keep the promise at the Legislative Council and hope they can witness our success.
We didn't forget about them. We are not just party happily, without them. We are going to celebrate later. Not now, but we will fight for them. We'll wait for them.
Those arrested in recent months are as young as 11 and as old as 84. Protests are scheduled to continue across the city through the rest of the week and into Christmas.
Next, transport strikes continue in Paris It's the second week of rolling strikes and protests in Paris. French unions are hoping to regain momentum by bringing hundreds of thousands of demonstrators back out onto the streets today.
Metro stations in Paris are busy, with commuters trying to get to work as usual. But 8 of the city's 14 metro lines are closed. Several others have a limited service, with suburban commuter trains also heavily disrupted. Paris is on its 13th day of planned transport strikes and mass protests arranged by French trade unions. The unions are trying to force President Emmanuel Macron to ditch a planned pension reform before the Christmas holidays. The French public have mixed feelings.
It evokes frustration. Since I wasn't the one who came up with the pension reform, I feel completely taken hostage. I'm frustrated, and I'm starting to feel quite angry right now.
I'm for and against the strikes at the same time. I mean, since I earn minimum wage, I have to still try to go to work. But I support what they are doing. They're motivated. I see it. Hopefully it works out.
French President Macron said he wants to streamline the complicated state pension system. He wishes to introduce incentives to encourage people to work until 64 instead of retiring at the average age of 62. French State Secretary of Transport spoke of the disruption to holiday travel plans. He said there will be trains on Christmas. He expects that more than 50% of people who wish to travel to be able to do so, meaning huge disruption for those who can't. Unions were slated to take part in protests across France on Tuesday.
And Sri Lankan communities continue to rebuild 15 years after a tsunami killed more than 200,000 people.
Kushil Ganaskara's memories of the massive tsunami that struck his village in Sri Lanka are still vivid.
9:33 in the morning, there was a huge commotion in the village, and then, it was too much to kind of not ignore. And then when I started to come out, people were running inland saying the sea is coming.
15 years ago this month, Ganaskara survived the tsunami by climbing up a temple on higher ground. But more than 230,000 people were killed by deadly waves from the Indian Ocean on Boxing Day. Indonesia bore the brunt after a 9.0 magnitude earthquake off the coast of Sumatra Island. But Sri Lanka was the second worst affected country, with a death toll of about 40,000. Villages like Sinagama relied on coral mining. Now, with less coral, the village is exposed, without any barrier to the killer tsunami waves.
We ate from the sea, and the sea ate us, because traditionally, for a very long time in these areas, it was coral mining, and they broke all the corals, so there was no resistance, breakwater.
More than a decade later, Ganaskara's village has risen from the rubble. He chose to leave his lucrative trade in sugar to devote his time to rebuilding, and started a foundation to help survivors like Namal Ishari learn vocational skills.
It was an opportunity for people to rise from the ashes. The tsunami taught the people a great lesson.
Ishari now makes twice the income of those in villages nearby. But this is the exception. Today, much of the coast that still reels from the tsunami relies on aid, without long-term livelihoods.
Up next, Google was asked a lot of health questions in 2019. See some of the top searches and answers after the break.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled, and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
It's the most festive time of year, but it's also the most wasteful. Americans throw away about 25% more trash between Thanksgiving and New Year's Eve than at other times of the year. But experts say making small, sustainable choices when it comes to gifting and decorating can have a big impact in protecting the environment.
Despite the cheer, the holiday season takes a toll on the environment. But there are some sustainable ways to simplify and reduce waste.
We need to be aware of our impacts and of the things that we're purchasing, of the things that we're consuming.
Number 1, go with eco-friendly gifts. Give items that are long-lasting or can be reused or recycled. How about gift certificates to local museums, concerts, restaurants, or theaters? Or better yet, make your own holiday presents.
And it's pretty affordable because most of the ingredients you can have it at home. For example, doing the natural body scrub, the only things you'll need is olive oil, salt, and coconut oil, and maybe some essential oils.
And most people already have this at home. If you don't have Himalayan salt, you can use regular sugar or regular salt.
Number 2, ditch the wrapping paper. Opt for alternatives like scarves, magazines, newspapers, maps, and posters. According to the CDC, if every American family wrapped just 3 presents in reused materials, it would save enough paper to cover 45,000 football fields. And number 3, when it comes to decor, ditch the tinsel and plastic decor. Instead, use natural items like evergreens, berries, flowers, and twigs to make ornaments. Or simply reuse last year's items and avoid the temptation to buy anything new.
Dr. Google is in the house, and users flooded the search engine with their most burning health questions in 2019. Here are the first half of the 10 most asked questions this year.
In 2019, there was a wide variety of what we wanted to know. Here's the bottom half of the top 10 most asked questions of Dr. Google and our answers based on medical experts' information. Kidney stones are solid pieces of material that can form in your kidneys when you have high levels of certain minerals and salts in your urine. The Mayo Clinic says there's no definite single cause, but certain factors like genetics and diet can increase your risk. HPV, or human papillomavirus, is spread through intimate contact and is so common, almost everyone will get at least one type of it in their lives. The CDC says 90% of the time it's harmless, but the other 10% of cases can cause certain cancers. The American Heart Association suggests keeping a healthy lifestyle. Don't smoke. Consume a moderate amount of calories. Exercise. In some cases, it can be genetic. Unfortunately, there's no easy answer to this. It's based on each individual. But the U.S. dietary guidelines suggest anywhere from 1,600 to 2,000 calories per day for women and 2,000 to 3,000 for men. Once again, this depends on several factors. But the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism says, on average, an adult can break down 1 12-ounce beer, 1 5-ounce glass of wine, or 1.5 ounces of 80-proof distilled liquor per hour.
Coming up, the final film in the Star Wars trilogy aims to bring the story that began in 1977 to an end. Fans at the premiere give their first reactions after the break.
Viewers have described China Uncensored like The Daily Show, but about China.
At the beginning, I was super excited when I got 500 views, and now the show's grown to about 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. One episode reached 7.9 million people. I'm a little freaked out that many people have seen my face. In 5 years, I see China Uncensored as the sole source of edutainment worldwide.
Fans and stars, including Daisy Ridley and Mark Hamill, were in attendance for the premiere of the 9th and final installment of the Star Wars saga.
Galactic stars past and present celebrated the end of the Skywalker family saga on Monday. It was the world premiere of the latest Star Wars film, the 9th episode called The Rise of Skywalker. And it seems for cast, crew and fans the idea of an end is bittersweet. Oscar Isaac plays Resistance pilot Poe Dameron.
I know in the days to come I'll mourn that we won't be able to be getting together and making these wild movies again, but at the moment it feels quite celebratory.
When the movie opens this week in theatres, it wraps up an epic story that began with the 1977 original. Director J.J. Abrams.
We definitely want to make sure that audiences feel, at least in their minds, like with any ending that hopefully moves you, that it could mean the opening of other doors. But we designed this movie very much to be the end of the saga.
The latest film trilogy has been all about passing the torch to a new generation of heroes and villains.
Last look, sir.
That hasn't always been easy for fans. But walking out of the theatre, this movie's first viewers seemed happy.
You absolutely cannot describe this film. It honestly completely blew my mind. I was not expecting all the different twists and turns, and you think one thing's going to be happening and then something else completely different happens, and just the action was so incredible.
I'm still blown away. I haven't processed the whole movie yet.
With the premiere wrapped up, anyone looking to go in unspoiled once fans do start talking may need to stay off the internet, at least until they see it themselves after December 18th.
Mariah Carey's festive classic, All I Want for Christmas Is You, soared to the #1 on the Billboard Top Hot 100 chart for the first time since its release 25 years ago. Billboard announced the news yesterday. The song was released as part of an EP in 1994, but at the time it wasn't commercially available as a single, making it ineligible to compete for the Hot 100. Carey's Christmas tune also took the top spot on Rolling Stone's Top 100 Songs chart for the week of December 6th through 12th. Last year, it reached #3 in the Hot 100. According to Billboard, this is Carey's 19th song to top the Hot 100. She holds the record for the most number of ones for any solo artist. And that's all for now. Thanks for tuning in. Join us again tonight. I'm Holly Kellum.